Welcome to the Peggy Smedley Show, the podcasting voice of IoT and digital transformation, with your host, Peggy Smedley.
Hello, listeners, and welcome back to the Peggy Smedley Show. My first guest is live here in the studio, and I'm very stoked. She has been in her current role for 14 years. I tell you, Beth, that is like an awesome time. So please welcome Beth Mosher, who's the Director of Public Affairs at AAA. Beth, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So you know what? I was looking, and you know the last time we were together?
I don't remember that.
You were with me at the Chicago Auto Show.
Yes.
You know, and you came over and we were talking distracted driving then, and it was crazy town over there at the auto show. And I had to do some research myself. I was like, I know you were on the show, you've been on the show, but we were like face to face talking about things.
Yes, I remember that now.
That was in 2014. So that's how long it's been since
we've come a long way since then.
Yeah, talking about it.
In terms of distraction and vehicles on the roadway, and now we've got automated vehicles on the roadway, so things have changed quite a bit.
So let's talk about automated vehicles now. We've been talking about distraction. We know that people cannot help themselves. They want to be on their phones all the time. But where are you guys at, AAA now? Where are you guys feeling about where things are in the marketplace right now? What are you guys telling us?
Well, in terms of distractions, things have changed quite a bit over the years. And one of the things that we're most concerned about, and we have done quite a bit of research on, is this mental distraction or cognitive distraction.
They've always been distracted.
Yeah. So if you think about eyes on the road, hands on the wheel, and you're trying to use your voice to text technology, either on your phone or in your car's infotainment system, we've done a lot of research on how those systems work. Are they distracting to people? Are they mentally distracting? And what we found is that that's exactly the case for a lot of these systems, is that people's minds are going, 10 different directions in terms of trying to do too much when they're on the roadway. These systems allow people to check their Facebook feeds or text while they're going down the road, and even the navigation systems we found in some cars can take up to 40 seconds to get through that navigation system, which is really, really dangerous as you're trying to drive down the road.
Here's my thing. Who decided this? I mean, we've been complaining about this forever. Everybody says, well, consumers want to find out what's happening on Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook. Who gives a rat's rear end? I mean, come on. These people do not need to know what's going on in social media. I mean, I know millennials and Gen Zs. Somebody's got to put the brakes on all this stuff and say it does not need to be in your car. But then the way we have to do it now, we're saying we can't stop them because the train has left the station and we're not going to stop it. And now NISTA is saying, look, we're going to have to do it. So now what we're going to have to do is have automated vehicles. Everyone's going to have it because we can't stop it. This social media craze, we can't. I mean, our president is tweeting galore. So, I mean, it's. So if that's it, is that what it's going to lead to? Is by 2025, we're all going to be sitting in the back seat reading our Twitter feed?
Well, we don't think that we're going to be there by 2025 in sitting in the back seat. We think that we'll still have some controls, but that's definitely the direction that this is headed, in towards automated vehicles. But we're probably decades away from a fully self-driving fleet.
But when we talk about that, I mean, will we exponentially, we're seeing change happen. The last time we talked, we never thought we'd get to this level. I mean, it's just rapidly happened. You don't think that we're going to have, I realize we've got to have an infrastructure that's going to get us to these things. But, our tech companies, let alone our car companies, I mean, I don't know who's the maker anymore. It's not a car company. It's you got Googles and Amazons and Apple and whoever's going to make whatever is getting involved. Is it an option? I mean, who knows? By 2030, who knows? Maybe every car on the road will be fully automated.
Yeah, well, that's certainly where things are headed. We do think it's going to be a little while before we'll have a fully automated fleet. But what we're seeing is that, people are taking these incremental baby steps towards automated vehicles and towards automated driving. We actually we do an annual survey of people's perceptions, people's feelings about self-driving cars, automated vehicles every year. And what we found this year in our survey is that about 71% of people are still skittish about fully self-driving cars. But the kind of the silver lining in all of that is that people who have driver assist systems in their car, like maybe their car does self-parking for them or has lane keeping technology, those people are more receptive to self-driving cars and fully automated vehicles. So we think that those baby steps are going to be key for consumer acceptance, but we're just not there yet.
Do we think, in your research, have you found that sometimes people get a little lax in some of this automated technology in their cars, that they think a backup camera is the way to go, and they're not even paying attention, and they're smacking into somebody? I mean, they're just not paying attention like they should. They're relying on this technology almost too much, and we're seeing less, the side cameras and things, and they're not paying attention like they really should. What are you seeing?
Well, the way that we actually researched it is we researched the vehicles themselves and whether these self-driving vehicles are kind of ready for the real world, if you will. And what we found is that driving down the highway, these vehicles perform very well. But in kind of real world scenarios, if you were to drive to the nearby grocery store within the Carroll Stream Wheaton area of suburban Illinois, that may prove to be difficult using this technology because the technology just isn't there yet to navigate through suburban start-stop situations and that sort of thing.
So what do we have to do? I mean, it's almost kind of like it says we're in a what's the word I want to use? That we've got an issue between it's fully embraced in the marketplace, before we can actually properly use it, because we're now looking at the technology that's here and where it can fully be adopted and properly used in the marketplace. Because I think we're seeing it in the cars. We're seeing it's just like the safety systems that we have in the cars. The cars are there that we're applying right now. It's there that we're saying the safety systems are there, but in proper usage, is it the right time? Is it the right time, or do we have to keep incrementally applying it and hoping people use it? But is that right? Because I don't know that people are being trained on how to use it. When we have pilots, when they go and use systems, they're trained on it. Are people being trained on these systems?
And that's so key. And that's one of the things that we found as well, is that people, when they go to their dealer and they buy these cars, they really need to go through the training to find out exactly what their cars do and cannot do. And we've done prior research as well on simply the naming of these technologies can throw people off, in that these systems are called ProPilot and self-pilot and that sort of thing. And it kind of confuses people in that their car is able to do more than it actually can do. So that's really where dealers can come in and help training of these folks. But, there are significant safety benefits coming down the road, we think, for fully automated vehicles. If you look at some of the main problems out there on the roadway today, impaired driving, texting and driving, distracted driving, all of those things are choices that we make that, can be fixed with
We have a lot of types of distractions. We've talked about that before. In its driver distraction, we say they're texting and doing things, but that's not our only distraction. I mean, people are distracted by, we gaze off and, we talked about the different types of things. But people are doing everything in the cars. We talk about this on my show all the time, that I'm a passenger all the time. I very rarely drive. And if I told you the things people do, they're brushing their teeth, they're eating. We watched a gentleman in the car. He's driving. He's got his iPad in one, his phone in the other, and he's eating a sandwich, all while driving behind the wheel. Heaven forbid. And it's a fascination to me, and he thinks that's okay. It's a weapon.
Yeah, absolutely. And people very much have a do as I say, not as I do mentality out there when they're driving, because if you ask that same person driving down the roadway, hey, how do you feel about distracted driving? What's a threat to you out there on the roadway? They would more than likely tell you that, they're scared of this, and this is a bad thing, and people need to pay attention. So a lot of drivers, unfortunately, say it's not me, I'm not the problem, but everybody needs to take personal responsibility for their driving out there on the roadway, and paying attention, hands on the wheel, eyes on the road is so important.
I say that all the time, that people always say it's not them. It's always someone else, that they can multitask. It's the other drivers that can't multitask. My favorite part of the distracted driving is at the stoplight. Everybody's looking at their phone at the stoplight. They go, well, I don't do it when I'm driving. I only do it when I'm at the stoplight or stop sign, and everybody's wailing on that horn, and they don't realize that's a major cause of distraction. I don't understand why people don't get that part of distraction.
It is, and for those people that do this, and there are a lot of them, and they think, I'm at a stoplight, I'm just going to check my email. What we found when we researched that is the distraction can linger for 27 seconds after that light turns green. I mean, if you think about that last text that you got, maybe you are in an argument with your husband, or you're thinking about a work situation, and you're now driving down the road thinking about those scenarios, and it's going through your brain, and now you're not thinking about driving. I mean, how often have we said, wait, how did I get here? I don't remember the last 3 blocks that I drove. And it's because our mind is engaged on something else besides the task of driving.
So when we look at this, are we trying to say, what message are we sending to our younger drivers? I mean, many of them aren't ever going to know how to parallel park. I mean, our cars are going to do it for us. But what message are we sending to the younger generation who are going to learn if we're the ones going like this, we're texting and playing around with the phone in our hand or doing whatever? Are they going to care? Because they're going to go, I don't have to worry about it. My car's going to do it for me. Are they already thinking it doesn't matter? It's not going to be me anyway. So do they care?
Well, what I think that our younger drivers see is mom and dad in the front seat for their whole life, on the phone, taking phone calls, and texting while they're driving. And then when those teens get in the driver's seat, they say, Mom did it, Dad did it, it's okay for me to do it. And so we're modeling this bad behavior to kids as young as 8, 9, 10 years old. And so if we're doing it, why would they listen to us when we say, oh no, you can't do this though? So modeling good driving behavior is so important. And the one thing that we know about teens is not just that phones are the problem, but other teens in the car can be a problem as well. And that's what parents really need to watch out for as well.
Are we saying that when we get automated driving systems, when we look at those, are we thinking that is going to eventually bring down driver distraction? Are we thinking that because as we get those more and more, I did a poll, I did my own survey here, and a bunch of people said, no, their plan is they're just going to have sex in the back seat. They just plan, they're going to do all kind of I'm just so thoroughly disgusted right now by the whole visual. But that's what people think. It's party time. Half of the population's like, ew, and the other half of us are like, well, is that just sarcasm, or do we really think people think that's a time that they can just do whatever they want when we have these new driver-assisted things? Are people not realizing, again, you should be thinking about using a car to get to point A to point B. It's not, I don't know what they think their cars are for. I'm always puzzled by it.
Yeah, exactly. And right now, drivers still, even in semi-automated vehicles, drivers still have to pay attention. They still have to have their hands on the wheel. They still have to be ready to take over should something happen. And so we're just not at that point right now where we're driving down the road and drivers can be in the back seat on their Twitter feed. We're just not at that point right now, and we're pretty far from that at this point in time. And so right now, drivers, even in semi-automated vehicles, they need to be paying attention to step in.
How do we do that when the late night comedians are, showing the younger generation, hey, we're going to do these skits where we're singing in the car. That's so cool. How do you send a message that that's not what we should be doing? And then, they're sending all the wrong message that, hey, let's be singing in our cars and we're driving. Is that sending a message to our kids? I kind of think that's a huge driver distraction right there.
Well, certainly there are so many things that can get into our teens' head, our young people's head, and be kind of the mixed message, including, as I said before, unfortunately,
Our
what
adults.
their parents do, as they're driving down the roadway. But we do think that the teens are kind of getting those messages, getting positive messages early, in that they're likely to put on their seatbelt. They do a great job of putting on their seatbelt. They do have some other problems, like speed is a big problem for them. So it's unfortunately an ongoing task to help our teens drive safely.
Seatbelt's a great idea. How did we make such progress in getting us to figure out putting on our seatbelts that save lives? Now we got this whole idea that we can do everything else. We can now think about, hey, it's okay to smoke cannabis, and we're going to, I don't know, I guess I'm trying to figure out, somebody's now smoked cannabis, they're going to get behind the wheel, and I know everybody's smoking cannabis is going to yell at me. I don't know how you can decide that's okay and be behind the wheel, and yet that's not going to be distracted. I'm kind of got mixed emotions on that whole cannabis concept, and that's a driver distraction. You could be singing behind your car, behind the wheel, and that's a driver distraction. I'm just trying to figure out, at what point do you not get behind the wheel and understand drinking and driving behind the wheel? All of these things are bad things to be behind the wheel. At what point do we get to it and say, you're driving a car? How do we get people to understand, just like we did when you get in the car, you put a seatbelt on? How do you get that mentality to understand you're behind the wheel of a car? Same
right. Well,
concept.
Now we get into a car and we put a seatbelt on, and that's automatic. Just like now we get into a car and put our kids in a car seat. But it took years for this to become a pattern, and it took extensive legislation. And so we'll get there with distracted driving. We're just not there yet.
How many lives lost? How many lives lost before we get there? There's a lot of lives lost on this, Beth. How many?
Absolutely,
Oh my gosh.
absolutely. But it took years and years and years for seatbelts to become routine, and even drinking and driving to be socially unacceptable in
It's
cars.
never going to be socially unacceptable because everybody thinks drinking's cool. I'm sorry. There's too many people who just drink and they get in the car. But I have to tell you, when you hear the tragic stories because of people killing someone else, and I have these people on my show, their young children were killed at a stoplight because someone went through because they were texting. Somebody went through, they killed their daughter before she went to prom. A senator's child was killed. These stories on my radio over and over and over. And I'm sorry, people sit there and say it's not their fault, and then we go, oh, it's okay. Or somebody barrels through in their truck and they kill a whole family in their car, and it's a fascination to me, and we go, well, they were texting, and it's okay. And we keep hearing them, and you know this way more than I. You do it every single day. I don't even know how you do it every day. I think every day I would not be able to handle it. But at what point do we just say, as a society, enough's enough, stop it?
Absolutely. And we believe that we will get there, and that's why interviews like this are so important. The research that we have done, and so many other safety organizations and our police that have done, it's so important so that people remember and people know. And we believe that we'll get there to the point where distractions and texting while you're driving is socially unacceptable, but we're not there yet.
So when you hear some of these stories and you go in there and you hear a parent talk about, I lost my child, lost my daughter, I lost my son to someone who was texting and driving, and then you go, wow, 3,700, 3,600, and nine people are lost, every day, it's just, the numbers are just staggering to me. And then people are like, well, I'm going to go text today. Every time I hear or I see one of my children do it, I'm like, are you crazy? Have you lost? They're like, it's only for a second. I'm like, no, that's all it takes. 4 seconds, 5 seconds, the length of a football field. I mean, these are just numbers I rattle off my head. You must have them listed constantly. But do people not believe? Is that the problem? I just don't. For me, I get it. instantly I
Yep.
get it. Do people just not believe it's true?
It goes back to what we were talking about earlier in the show, where people think that they can multitask, and people think, I'm not the problem. Do as I say, not as I do. And
Until
unfortunately,
they get in the accident, until they actually hurt someone or they hurt themselves. I mean, is that when the light bulb goes off and they go, maybe I shouldn't do it? Until they get the scare, something happens and they suddenly, oh, I almost hurt. Ooh, and that feeling and that the hair in the back of your neck goes up and you realize, oh wow, that was a close call. Is that when reality hits in?
yeah, for some people, unfortunately, that's what it takes, and it's so frustrating because, the research and all of the stories, and
Can we just start throwing all these people a night in jail and let them know? Let's see what a night in jail is like for all of you, moronic people who don't get it. I mean, maybe they just need. I don't care who they are, but this is just silly. If you're that. There's got to be a way to tell people are texting. We have all this phenomenal technology. We can't tell when people are texting and driving now.
And maybe we'll get to that point, back to those infotainment systems that allow you to do these things as you're driving down the road. That's one of the reasons that we did this research, to help auto manufacturers understand what's safe, what causes cognitive distractions, and help them build safer systems and give them the information to build these safer systems. We know that the Google Autoplay, or the Google Android Play system, and the Apple Autoplay system are safer in cars than the systems that the manufacturers build, or less complex to use, I should say, is instead of safer. And so we know that they can be built and used safely. And that's part of the reason that we're doing all of this, is to help auto manufacturers build them safely, so that you can't be doing all of these things that are not essential to the task of driving when you're driving down the roadway.
Is that typically because you just said that because people are used to that? They interact with them daily. So if they're doing Google system, they're doing an Apple system, they're with it daily. So they understand how to use that better than when they get in a car and it's something so, they're not with it all the time. They're not interacting with it on, 24/7, so to speak.
It's actually in how they're built, in that it takes less steps to get to the navigation system or to input the navigation system. The voice-to-text technology is a little bit better. It understands your voice a little bit better. And so it's actually how the systems are built and used. But we want to get to the point where you shouldn't be able to use Facebook as you're driving down the roadway. These systems should be no more difficult to use than you using your radio as you're driving down the roadway. So that's what we're trying to get to.
What of the research that you did really stood out for you, that you really said, this was the most startling to me?
The 27 seconds that the distractions linger with you for 27 seconds as you're driving down the roadway. But we go back to 2013, when nobody was looking at cognitive distractions and how what's happening to your brain as you're using these voice to technologies, where hands on the wheel, eyes on the road, and just simply studying that and recognizing that there are different levels of distraction. And it was kind of groundbreaking back in 2013 what AAA did. And so just looking at that and recognizing that cognitive distraction is a thing, it is a problem, and then we've built on that research for the last 6 years.
So do you think that will help? The more you build on the research, the more you get, because, when I was saying when I first started this too, was a quiet voice. Not enough people were rallying behind this, and we've been doing it, and you get more and more, the voice gets louder, and I always say that. You get more people to pay attention, and then people start realizing, well, maybe I shouldn't do that, and that's the key. Do you think the automakers are now recognizing this is not what we should be doing? We should be thinking about it differently? Are they taking this? Safety is a very important thing to automakers. They take that very seriously. That's the one thing I will say about them. If they think they're causing harm, that's not that's their number one thing. So Are they now looking at Apple and Google to say, let's, work together at this? Are they thinking things differently, or is it still too soon to say?
We think that they're thinking differently. We've not surprised them with this research. We've met with all of the automakers. We've met with Apple. We've met with Google. We've met with NHTSA to kind of show them this body of research and body of work and how cars can be designed and these systems can be designed so that they are safer. We believe that they are hearing us. We believe that, just as you mentioned, that they want to design safe systems. A little bit, though, is that they're battling consumers, not battling, but the consumers want these systems, but consumers want safe systems as well. So we'll get there. We're just not all the way there yet.
Well, I was looking, I pulled down reports you guys have up on the site, so there's all kinds of things you guys have. So Beth Mosher, Director of Public Affairs for AAA, where can our listeners go to get more information on what you guys in some of the reports?
I recommend that they go to our AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety website, and it's AAAfoundation.org. It's got a really great site with all of this information on distraction in automated vehicles as well.
Yeah, I was constantly pulling down stuff. There's some great data, and I think people should read. I think they should pay attention because I think the numbers are always staggering. So, Beth, it's always great talking to you. Thanks for sharing time with me today, and keep up the good work.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
All right, listeners, we are out of time for this segment, but stick around. We've always got more to come. Check out our website at connectedworld.com. As I said, we put up a new article, and we've got check out the PeggySmedleyShow.com. Follow us on Twitter, ConnectedWMag. As always, this is the Peggy Smedley Show, the podcasting voice of IoT and digital transformation. Remember, with great technology comes great responsibility. I'll be right back after this commercial break.